deal. I'm telling you something, gang. Do you know what's going on here? Do you know the vast majority of the time that I do IEPs with families, do you know what I find? They don't get what they need because they don't hold them accountable. They say no, and they go boo-hoo and walk away. Who's holding these people accountable? And if they say no, what are you going to say? Okay? Who's holding them accountable? Let me tell you something. If every single person that did IEPs would carbon copy these same people, in the state of Tennessee, if the governor saw 437,000 letters come across his desk all saying the same stuff, do you think we'd be having these issues? Start writing, gang. And talking doesn't do it. You have to have documentation. It's absolutely critical. Okay, I have like 2 minutes. So send the initial meeting requests in writing. Phone calls. If you have phone calls that are coming in, if a school calls you and says blah, 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 when you hang up that phone, you go to your computer, and not 12 days later. You go to your computer and you say, "Dear Miss Jones, thank you so much for our conversation today regarding Johnny. Let me make sure I understand what you said correctly. What I think you said was, quote, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever it was, carbon copy, carbon copy, carbon copy, carbon copy," and then you send those off. Again, gang, paper trail accountability. You got to hold them accountable. And here's the deal. I cannot tell you how many times things have gotten settled, not because of anything I did, but because of the carbon copies. Tennessee Department of Ed gets on the phone with the school system and says, "What the heck are you doing?" And I didn't have to do anything. I just made a couple phone calls. Makes my job really easy. Same thing, conversations in the hallway. You have a conversation in the hallway, you go home that day, type it up. Send it out. Put everything in writing. The other biggie, too, is you tape record all of your meetings. That's huge. Absolutely huge. Yesterday was another prime example of what happens. We did an IEP 3 weeks ago and came back to the table this time. And by the way, a lot of these don't ever happen in one session. They happen over lots. We came back to the table again yesterday, and all of a sudden there were these notes that had changed. And they weren't really at all what we had talked about. And guess what? We recorded the meeting. So we could go back and do minutes of that whole entire meeting. And so when we say, well, you know, gosh, I don't think that's what we talked about in the last meeting. Oh, yes, it was. Well, you know, hang on. Let me pull these minutes. No, look. Would you like a copy of the tape? You know what I'm saying? Document. You have to be able to document stuff. While we're talking about minutes, one shift that's been happening a lot. Ooh, I got to be quiet. One shift that's happening a lot is I'm seeing a lot of schools that are pulling related services out of the IEP portion and putting them in the notes. Do not let them do that. The notes are not a legal part of the document. No. It doesn't mean they won't help you. I mean, if you have something in the notes and all of a sudden they're not going to honor it anymore, you know, you still have something in writing and that's very much to your advantage, but it's actually not really a part of that legal document. So if they're moving stuff into the notes, you need to require that they keep it in the body of the IEP. Everything. You know what? When you sign off on an IEP, this is really huge too. Do you know that if you don't sign an IEP, it goes into effect in 10 days anyway? Right? Because there's a lot of parents out there who, you know, unfortunately there are deadbeat parents. It does happen. And when you have parents that don't show up, these kids can't not ever have an IEP because nobody ever comes. So it's a protective mechanism for them. But what you need to do is sign it, but make sure that you indicate on that IEP that you are not in agreement, and below your signature, put your dissent. Nope. Yep, signed it. Yes, I was here. Man, not happy. Here's why. Because if you sign it and you don't put dissent on there, and then you end up at some point going to due process, you know what the judge is going to say? You signed it. You agreed. See ya. So if you're not in agreement with it, make sure that you're putting your dissent in there. No, you sign, did I say that? Shoot me. You sign it and you put your dissent below it. Sorry.